Good morning. Welcome back to the House Government Operations and Military Affairs. Today is Thursday, March 13th, 2025. Let's see. Is this the 5-year anniversary of
It
when we
is.
shut down for COVID?
I already said that this morning.
Oh, wow. That just hit me. That was a day, wasn't it?
It sure
For a week.
was.
Whoa.
I was married 1 week.
That's
Kept saying
right.
about my bride month. Oh, yeah.
A
very long time.
Okay, well, we can all, those of us who were served in that period, we can relive that trauma later.
Yeah.
But what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna invite Representative Evans up to discuss H 450. It is a bill that came in a little bit later, but we feel it's relevant to our miscellaneous elections bill conversation. Madam Dean, good to see you.
Welcome. For the record, my name is Representative Alice Emmons from Springfield. And this is a bill 450, I believe is the number. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what the intent is, and then the language I would really prefer to have our legal counsel, Tucker Anderson, go through it a little bit because it's very nuanced. The issue is when there's a recount of an election, a House recount, Senate recount, any recount, there's been concern that family members can participate, family members of the person that where the recount is occurring, can participate in that recount. And there's the statute is silent on that. And for anyone who's been through a recount, it's a pretty emotional and unsettling situation. And in an election, a regular election, family members and the candidate are really not really allowed to participate in the election. I mean, to work the polls, get near the ballots, or any of that. And in a recount, we're silent on that. So family members can be part of those committees that do the recount. And our town clerk was a little upset. We had a recount. It was a family member. And she was upset in that the family members were not allowed to work the polls on election day or even work election night and counting the ballots. So this bill attempts to, on the recount committees for recounts of elections, that family members would not be able to be members of those recount committees. That's the gist of it.
Okay. No, that on its surface very much seems logical. So I'm glad we were able to get you in here. Representative Pizarro, do you have a question?
The state statute right now is that even working an election, the only one that can work an election in an uncontested race is the town clerk. It might not hurt to have the legislature have it say that family members cannot work as well.
Of anybody that's on the
Of
ballot.
anybody that's on the ballot uncontested. Just saying, I mean, definitely for a recount, I would not let family member or a person work.
But in a recount, the town clerk has no control.
No, right.
It goes to the county, it goes to the court. And it's up to the candidates that are in that recount. It's up to those individual candidates to submit names,
10 names.
10 names of folks that they would like on their recount committee. And then the judge picks the names. So there's no, I'm thinking, how does the judge know the connection?
The filter's not known. Yeah.
Right, so names are the same.
Yeah.
So it's really the candidate, the one that submits the name to the court, and the judge makes those decisions. And I know in Springfield, our town clerk is very, very careful. And as an example, this past election, on our Board of Civil Authority, between family members and candidates, there were 6 people that were not allowed to be work the polls or count the ballots. There were 3 family members, a husband and some children, and then the 3 candidates. So there were 6 people who were not allowed to be at the polls, working the polls, or counting those election ballots that evening. So she's very, very careful of that. And I know personally, in all my elections, I have been very, very careful not to touch anyone's ballot, particularly anyone who's living at my home. My husband will get his ballot and I stay as far away from that as possible. And if he has a ballot to return, I said, you return it. I'm not touching it. And you vote when I'm not in the house. And I'm very, very careful about that and always have been.
Representative Hango.
I think I have a question and a comment. First of all, this is totally understandable, totally reasonable. My question might be for Rep. Pincinot, who is the town clerk. I'm assuming that the people who are nominated by the candidate for the recount do not have to be members of the BCA. And can they live outside of that municipality? Okay, that's good. That reassures me because in a small town like mine, everybody's related to everybody.
Yeah.
And there would be no way I could find 10 people who were not related to me to do a recount. So I'm reassured. Thank you.
You can have anyone on your recount ballot from anywhere in Vermont. It doesn't have to be from the district, doesn't have to be from the county. It has to be from the state.
Has to be a registered voter.
It has to be a
You're not
registered.
just isolated to the district.
Great.
Yes, to
That's
your
even
voter
better.
pool. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got a lot of latitude.
Have a lot of latitude and to have a family member just kind of like,
It's sometimes touchy just to have a really good friend.
Hmm.
Hey, you choose your friends, don't choose your family.
Mhm.
so that's what I aim to do with the legislation.
Well, thank you for the time. It seems the committee is finding this broadly logical for inclusion in the elections bill, so we'll talk with council and
Thank you.
yeah, I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. I gotta scoop and get my committee going.
Hey, committee. The schedule has us doing this into the elections bill, smooth transition. So
Can I ask a question?
absolutely, that's what we're doing right now. I
It
think
says disinterested individuals, but it doesn't spell out family members.
that's the conversation we're gonna have. Yes, please, sir. We're gonna break this down, then we're gonna chit chat a little bit about what I think we are
Oh,
heading
wait a minute,
towards
yes,
for.
sorry. All right.
We're gonna talk about this piece, then we're gonna run through where we want to guide this conversation to a final product for the elections bill for a vote. So that's how I'd like to play the next hour.
To roll it in.
We're having that conversation, but I believe rolling this in is logical. Council.
Good morning. For the record, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Counsel. You have in front of you H450 as introduced, and you got a wonderful summary overview of what the bill does. It relates to nominations and appointments to recount committees in the case of a contested election. One thing to note up front: the term individual is used purposefully in the underlying statute and here because it means a natural person, a human being, not a person, which under the general definitions in our statutes includes entities and corporations. So disinterested individual is the clarifying term that is used throughout this bill, and it is defined. If you go to the end of the bill on page 2 of 2 in the new subsection C, disinterested individual means an individual who is not a relative of, so there's the family member. Consanguinity is going to be the minimum test here, which means shared blood, but relative of also relates to legal relatives, or subordinate to. That means things like employees, managed volunteers, which if a court interprets it this way, could be volunteers, for example, for a campaign. And additional criteria, who shares no direct pecuniary interest with the candidates. Pecuniary seems like a super legalistic term to use, and I don't like being legalistic, but it is fairly broad and that it describes a financial relationship that goes beyond pure currency and relates to shared value between the two individuals. So think about common property ownership interests where there could be a benefit. Taken in total, this means that you cannot be related to the candidate. You cannot be subordinate to in employment. This person isn't managing you in some capacity. And even if you don't meet those two criteria, you don't have some sort of shared financial interest, property interests, et cetera, with the individual that could be used as leverage.
Business partners.
Business partners, great example. I don't receive financial benefit from this person, but we have a shared value interest. I benefit from this person in some way. There's two levels to this. The first level is that disinterested individual is built into the actual nomination. So the candidates are prohibited from nominating disinterested individuals. And then there's a duty put on the court for the actual appointment that they're not allowed to appoint someone who is not disinterested.
I see gears turning on that.
No, just
No, everybody's just thinking. Marinate on that for a moment.
sleep.
Representative Coffin.
Yeah, just clarification on that, because something you said earlier. So if it's somebody that worked on your campaign, like helped you campaign, but wasn't listed as a person on your campaign, like your treasurer or your whatever, but somebody that helped campaign for you, would they still be considered?
Well, they would have to be subordinate to the candidate.
Okay.
So does the
So-
candidate direct their work and activities? Is there an element of supervision and control involved? So if, for example, for your campaign, if you were the one organizing and directing the activities of that group of people, they would be subordinate to you.
So if you got a bunch of people together to sign wave for you, then they could not participate in the recount?
Exactly. But if these were just members of the community that were out there putting up yard signs and supporting your campaign, they would not be subject to your supervision and control.
Mhm.
And really what subordinate is getting at is people that you're employing.
Representative Morgan.
To expand on that, you're not technically employing them, are you? I mean, they're doing, these are volunteers in this situation. Like I would say, I'm full disclosure, having done recounts, I believe some of those people in that room that did that probably at some point touched the campaign in some way, shape or form. You know, the list I put forward, the people I know that I trust and put forward. But I mean, that they weren't beholden to me with like a salary or but that would still, with the intent of this, that would still, going forward, would violate this.
They are subject, it sounds like from your example, and hypotheticals are always dangerous for legislative
Oh, yeah.
counsel to address. But the facts that you are presenting,
Yes.
it sounds like those are individuals that you are supervising and controlling
Okay.
the work that they
Good to
do.
know. No, it's good to know for future reference. Okay, perfect.
So maybe it was the conversation around the date in the pre-COVID era, but I just had a haunting term come back for me from the family leave days. In loco parentis.
Yes.
Is that too broad of a capture for this conversation?
Are you talking about for purposes of
Recounts.
related to,
Yes.
relative of?
Yeah.
So relative isn't defined here. And this language very closely mirrors the same sort of requirements for disinterested witnesses for purposes of testamentary documents. So you can't, for example, bear witness to the execution of a trust or a will, right? If you're a relative, because you might benefit from that testamentary document, that will. And in that context, legal relation is the same or is treated the same under the law as what I termed consanguinity, blood relation.
So that in loco parentis. is that
In
what you said?
loco parentis.
Place of the parent.
In place of there.
And that was in and around it, how to expand those who qualified for like care of an elder or child within the context of the family leave bill from.
I got you. Just need a little clarity. Thank you.
Typically, what you're talking about is a legal guardian.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So there is an established legal relationship that would be recognized here as a relative.
Makes sense.
And sort of to close the loop on that, the reason that term was used in the bill was we just had all of these like enumerated relative relations or extensions thereof. So this was a word when Damien was handling that portfolio that we spoke to it on.
Using a lot of big words early today. Enumeration.
Consanguinity ad nauseum in loco parentis. This is a very Latin morning.
It's not even 9:30.
Thanks for
Don't
stretching
make
our
me
brains.
All right, folks. Thank you for that, counsel.
Yeah, you're still confused.
I'm still thinking, my,
Yeah, tell.
Do it. Yeah.
Think aloud.
I'm sorry. Thank you for that dalliance back to the family we've already had.
Thinking of all the connections he's got moving forward. Vermont, we're small, man.
yeah,
So let's talk for a minute about how we want to start dialing in this bill for a vote.
I think we all need to look at the newest copy,
Correct.
right?
We have new
Which
copy.
is draft 1.7.
mhm. Draft 1.7 overview.
Morning, committee members.
Morning.
Hello, sir.
Thank you very much for having me back. For the record, Tim Devlin, Legislative Counsel. And Chair Byron, if you'd like, I could work through the updates to this and maybe starting from the outline and kind of bouncing back and forth where appropriate. For the committee's ease of reference, changes to the bill itself have been highlighted. That is, changes from draft 1.6 to 1.7. So what was highlighted yesterday is no longer highlighted. That's old news. This is updated things. And then looking at the overview, changed text has been, the modified parts of the bill have been indicated in green ink for ease of reference there. So you can see it's kind of skimming through that. Some changes, but certainly not the entirety of it. So, Chair Byron, would you like me to kind of go through the bill systematically or just kind of hit the changes?
Let's hit the changes and then circle back. Let's take a look at the new and then
Okay,
bring it in.
Unfortunately, I'm gonna go print a copy because
Okay.
I want paper copies.
Go get it.
You can see, yeah.
okay. So the first significant change of the bill occurs in part 5, which has to do with electronic ballot returns report and miscellaneous changes to electronic ballot delivery law. And this is sections 8 and 9 in the bill. And let me pull up that page. That is the area starting on, let's see, page 8 of the bill. And this is section 9. This section would have been in the, sorry, no, that's a different note. Sorry, so this is a portion of the bill that was taken out, but at the recommendation of the Secretary of State's office, and which was found to be amenable by this committee, was inserted back in, and it doesn't have to do with the electronic return of ballots so much as just inserting a definition that was dropped once the electronic return was removed from the bill previously. So now we have a definition of overseas voter, which is a person who was last domiciled in Vermont before leaving the United States and resides outside the United States. That is a slightly different definition that was in there before. So in addition to that, you'll also enable voters who participate in the State Secretary of State's address confidentiality program to receive their ballots electronically. So a new definition and a new category of people to receive ballots electronically, not returned electronically. And I should just note here that the old section 8 that was removed, that doesn't appear highlighted because there's nothing to highlight, would have had mail-in ballots sent to voters for primary elections in addition to general elections. That has been removed. Okay. The next part of the modified bill is in section 10. This is the candidate demographic information. And before we had 3 sections being modified, this really only has one surviving amended section. And this is, let's see, we'll now only amend 17 VSA 2665 as notification to Secretary of State. This is found in the local elections, town meetings, and local elections in general section. Will enable the collection of demographic information voluntarily provided by candidates running for local offices, excluding school boards, specifically the name, gender, age, or race or ethnicity. Notably, it adds an exemption to the Public Records Act, as well as making, going a step further, making that demographic information confidential, except for that the Secretary of State may publish that data in aggregate form. The also a note here, the sections that would have had the candidates provide this information on consent of candidacy forms has been removed. And the information would now be collected in a form provided by the Secretary of State, so that clerks wouldn't have to worry about redacting information. Questions in?
No, thank you. No, this is just good to see, all of yesterday's conversations translated onto a page like this. So thank you.
And let's see. The next part of the bill that to modify in this draft found under the write-in candidate registration and minimum thresholds in primary elections, specifically section 14, page 14 of the bill. And this adds in something that was taken out in prior drafts because it was integrated into the ranked choice voting section. And this is essentially a mirroring provision for presidential primaries that would require a candidate for the U.S. presidency to register filing a candidacy form no later than 5 p.m. on the second Friday preceding the primary election. And this is similar to language for on section 12 for other elections having that same deadline.
Gotcha. Okay.
Confusion, sorry.
No.
December, line 17,
See,
page 14,
14. Okay.
15th day of December.
Yeah, I was working off of that.
Okay.
What's the significance of December? I'm lost.
Let's see, that's already in statute. That's not being modified right there. Sorry, the whole section has been highlighted just so that the whole section has been put back in, but the only modified parts are really that new subdivision F there.
Thank you. All right, so.
Oh, so that's existing?
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. I didn't remember talking about December at all, so,
We've been doing more in November's lately.
yeah.
The next part of the bill has to do with campaign finance. And this is under section 17. Let's see. And this is where we have the new, let's see, the definition of independent expenditure only, political committee, and the addition of a new term, public questioning campaign. That definition has been somewhat modified, so I'll just read it in its entirety now. Public question campaign means a political campaign, specifically an effort to influence an election, that conducts its activities entirely independent of candidates, does not give contributions to candidates, political committees, or political parties, does not make any, quote, related campaign expenditures, that's another term defined above, as defined in section 2944B of this title, and is not closely related to a political party or a political committee that makes contributions to candidates or makes related expenditures. A public question campaign includes any campaign making independent expenditures as defined by US Code 52 USC, section 30-101. And then also, we have a new section 18, which removes two references to that now defunct term, independent expenditure only political committee, and replaces those instances with public question campaign. So just kind of some cleanup there. The next part of the bill that has been modified, you'll see in section 20. This has to do with the audits of checklists and district boundaries. So this is on page 20. Well, this again is session law that will now require town clerks and boards of civil authority on or before August 15th, 2025 to perform audits of voter checklists for representative districts and senatorial districts that split municipal boundaries. Before, it was the onus was put on the Secretary of State to perform the audits. Now it is the Board of Civil Authority town clerks that will do it. There's kind of three different timelines here. So by that August 15th date, they'll have to perform, those local entities will have to perform the audit. Then on or before September 15th, each town should say clerk must provide a written summary of the audit to the Elections Division in the Secretary of State's office. And then finally, on or before November 15th, 2025, the secretary in turn shall submit a written report findings of this audit, that audit to this committee and its sister committee.
Representative Hango, then Representative Morgan.
So my question now, seeing it in legal terminology, Tim, is municipal boundaries divided for the purpose of the districts? Can we get an example of which districts that would be? Because like Burlington is one municipality, but it's divided into many districts. So would they be required to do an audit, or would it be a district like mine that encompasses 4 municipalities?
It would be the former, rather than the latter. As written,
What's
If it's just like a district like Burlington that's divided up into separate districts.
Wasn't the intent for the whole state to be audited?
Well, it was,
It
but then we
was.
amended that yesterday. The Secretary of State suggested amending that yesterday
Yes.
because it didn't make sense for municipalities whose full boundaries are within the district be audited because there's no reason. Like my district is 4 towns, 4 municipalities, and there's no reason why they would
No
receive.
roads, no rivers, no weird stuff.
Yeah.
And then you don't get
Like
those,
Bennington one.
you don't get that split street thing. That's a possibility where you have
Oh,
that.
yeah, that makes sense.
So what we're doing right now,
Right,
instead of doing this
but-
total capture of all districts, they're isolating it to districts that were similar to or like. And then we're gonna see what the results are, and then we assess if we gotta dig deeper.
Okay, so I guess what you're saying, Tim, does make sense to me.
In a nutshell, that's it. It was like that original language, it just seemed a little unnecessarily broad.
But I get it. Yeah.
So now we're taking a look at the like districts. And then we're gonna see what you get for.
Yeah, 'cause we got
So for.
Literally, Milton, there's a street where
Right.
I'm one.
on the other side of the other road signs.
I'm one, my New Haven, I got a third of New Haven and I split streets, right? So
Yeah.
my district is.
Gotta be audited.
And is the Secretary of State the person who determines those districts that need to be audited and tells those town clerks and BCAs?
there's no mandate for the secretary to do that. It would be, as this is written, those local entities would self-identify.
I would like to mandate that the Secretary of State decide who needs to do the recounts. Because if you leave it to the towns, some of them may not even
Just not
know
do it.
that they have to, that some of them may not know that they have to do it.
I totally understand what you're saying. I would love, she's done processing to pick the brain of our resident clerk. Yep. Representative Waters Evans.
My understanding is that the Secretary of State's office is going to work closely with the town clerks who might have questions about whether or not this applies to them, because they do have a list. I believe I asked the Deputy Secretary of State, what day was it, yesterday? When they came in, if they had a clear list. Yes, and the elections director as well. And they said, yes, that they do have a clear list. So I'm assuming they're going to communicate with the town clerks to let them know.
Okay, so if they have a list, there's no reason why they can't send that list out to the towns. You are the ones that need to do this. And the towns then will know without having to be proactive enough to look at their email, which some of them get tons of email and may not even look at, like, you know, this news bulletin is coming out that you have to do an audit. I'm just very concerned about the rural towns that they have part-time town clerks. They
Yeah,
don't have the capacity to know that they have to do everything. So if the Secretary of State's office already has the list, I would like them to ask the town clerks to do it.
yes.
So
Representative
no
Waters.
extra work.
Yeah, that was, so yeah, but it was the onus on the Secretary of State, but they're pushing it down to the clerks and PCAs. I get that. That was an issue my clerk had. She goes, are you gonna throw that workload on us? And I'm like, maybe, I don't know, but I get why they would see that those entities would need to do that, because they're most familiar with the middle of, in our case, McMullen Road, that's got two different sets of road signs. So
Everybody's got a
I'm
line.
gonna have to go back to her and say, look, it just makes sense, you know, I mean, unless you see something, Sandy, as a fellow clerk, that would tell you that's an undue burden or I guess I'd have to push back with her on that. and go,
Right, because when we originally put it in here, we had here that Secretary of State's office was gonna make sure to report back to us that they'd all been audited
Right,
and were done correctly. Now she's putting it out to the town clerks to make sure it's been done.
But the Secretary of State is still,
I gotta hand over.
still.
Sorry.
and that's my clerk didn't want. So you're sort of saying the same thing.
Right,
Okay.
because they don't come from the clerks. Those changes don't come from the clerk's office. They come from every time there's a
Reapportionment.
reapportionment, you know, that comes from the Secretary of State's office. So it would be up to the Secretary of me, making it Secretary of State's office, she might want to make sure that they're done properly.
Gotcha. Representative Waters Evans.
Thank you. My recollection from the testimony that we heard from the Secretary of State's office, it was that they did have discussions with the town clerks and that they understood that it was going to be some work, but also they wanted it to be right. Am I remembering that correctly? I believe that's what Deputy Secretary and the Elections Director also said, is that though they understood that there was work involved in this, they understood that it was, they concurred that this needed to happen in order to ensure that future elections were, future voter lists were corrected and to avoid this in the future. It is a work for the town clerks to do, but if I remember correctly, we can go back and look again, but that they were supportive of it because they are in the interest of making sure everything's good. Did you say -1?
-1 at least.
I
can
guess
say.
yours didn't,
No,
oh,
I know, I'm being smart.
maybe also it was the town clerk representative who said they sent out a survey.
Yeah.
Is that what I was thinking of?
Yeah.
It wasn't, sorry, it wasn't the Secretary of State's office. Thank you. It was the Town Clerks Association. They sent out a survey.
Yeah.
Maybe 100 and something people responded. Maybe yours didn't respond. But the vast majority of them were supportive of doing it for that reason. Thank you for.
But I could
bringing
see,
me
it.
around.
I could see it going both ways.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's BCA's I'm on our BCA and put a big set of Buffalo. I mean, it's.
Right, I would hate to see it be a mandate and then nobody can follow up to make sure that's done.
No, that's where we're finding Lucy guys here. Sorry, represent one. All right, we're getting super informal here. Let's bring it in.
I was just gonna refer to Chelsea's testimony from yesterday. If you pull up her graphs, about 50% of those clerks said that yes, they could take it on with their BCA as long as they had resources from the Secretary of State's office and some training and just some support.
So support and guidance?
Yes,
Yes. Do we have support and guidance?
Yeah. They said 50% said yes. 8.3% said yes with difficulty. And 16.7% were unsure, with the rest saying that.
Like I said.
Representative, first hand go, then Pistol. Yep.
Thank you.
I'm starting a list.
Thank you. I wanted to respond to Rep. Pincinel's concern. After the town clerks and the BCAs do according to this new draft, do the audit, they will send a written summary to the elections division at the SOS office. And then on November 15th, the SOS is going to submit a written report to this committee. So there is that closing of the loop that you were concerned about. It's not just the town clerks. But my original concern is that somebody needs to tell the town clerks that they've got to do this and which town clerks.
So it's like language to
It's like
notify.
belt and suspenders,
No.
yes.
I'm just trying to
language
make sure I
notify.
understand what you're asking.
Yep, I'm asking for language to notify the affected town clerks.
Okay.
Because it might be a town clerk from two different districts who has to participate.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like back to my just lived reality, right? Like, so it would be like myself and representative North and I's district with Representative McGill's district.
Right. And I'm
Right?
just
So you
trying
got
to.
those, both need to understand that they have the split road,
Right.
and-
just to use the example.
Right, and I'm just trying to make sure that all the loopholes are closed, so we don't ever have this problem.
No, totally.
again.
And this is like a big part of the Bennington work. I want to make sure we get the words on the page right. Because this was a very, very important step to the whole project within the Bennington watershed. I completely agree with that. So, Representative Pistol, you're next on my list.
I was gonna say that what's the word that they used?
For what?
That would have difficulty doing it.
They said yes with difficulty.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is time.
Mhm.
Okay,
Like it's not a difficult task, but it's really like a two-person thing, because you're gonna be going through some, you're gonna checklist, look at the map.
Sure.
So,
do you think that's an ample timeline within the words?
but between now and November, I think it's ample time, yes.
No, between now and August.
It's
Now
August.
it's
No, it's August for them to do the
Right.
assessment, so the report can be issued by.
I think that's ample time,
Okay.
because we're not into any elections right now. So
Representative.
And my question is that notification to perform the audit, when should that happen? When should the Secretary of State tell the affected districts that they need to do this? Because the districts are going to need to mobilize their people. People are on vacation, people are doing school things with their kids. So as soon as possible or?
I mean, I think there
when?
should be a bit of a date target there,
Yeah.
but Representative Boyd.
The bill goes into effect on passage, so.
Right.
It could be
Once the bill
notification,
goes into.
maybe give them a berth on that, like maybe
Yeah.
like, I don't know, and I'm just kind of spitballing
Yeah.
here, right? Like, do we do upon passage, 2 weeks after, a month after? I don't know. This is something I want to talk to either Deputy Secretary of State or the Elections Director about before we make a final call on a directive like this from their office.
I do want to give the town clerks as much time as possible to gather their BCAs or whoever they're having to do this because
That is a process, being on a BC.
it is, and to be called up unexpectedly. They expect regular elections, but they don't expect odd incidences like this.
And sensitivity to those boards and clerks is part of the job.
Mhm.
You have to have quorums on those too, having been literally sat in those calling people going, can you get over here
Yeah.
in 10 minutes? We don't have a quorum, so we can do it.
Mhm.
So that is, I'm not trying to throw a wrench, in it, but
Okay.
it does There is some, because it's all, volunteerism and so forth, so.
Okay, I got another hand up here and then I want to hone in what we're thinking.
My comment was intended to own it.
Oh, cool. Look at us.
I think what we're saying
Linked and
here,
synced.
I think we can all agree that, yes, this is a burden on the town clerks. I think that we can also agree that it is a necessary action that needs to happen. We've heard it from multiple people at the Secretary of State's office. I think we heard it from the wide variety of people who testified in the Bennington 1 resolution. And I think that we cannot create a date until we consult with the Director of Elections and the Secretary of State's
Yes.
office. So we have a couple tasks to do, which is to communicate with them about the date and then to ask him if he doesn't mind coming up with some language that would maybe leave an X where the date goes. Can we do that and leave it blank and just say something to the effect that the Secretary of State's office will notify towns before X date, notify town clerks before X date that they are going to be participating in this audit process. Does that make sense?
If we can get an answer from them
Oh, we will.
in time to pass this bill,
Oh, no.
yes.
Oh, no,
And if
no,
not,
we're
then
not-
we have to set a date.
I'll get
No,
on the
we're
board.
not, yeah, no,
Yeah.
they're, trust me, they're on speed dial while we're doing this.
Perfect.
Okay.
Representative Boyd.
I was just gonna say worst case scenarios is something that we put in the Senate and the bill is hopefully passes and then goes into effect latest possibly May or late May, whatever. Then they have from May until August to complete if the Secretary of State notifies them upon passage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all
I think
kind of
that's
saying the same thing. We
understandable.
just got to dial in the words so we
Yeah.
understand what we're putting forward as a directive. Okay, so we're charting a path on this one. Cool. All right, Mr. Devlin.
So just before moving on, I've made a note to draft two new subsections, a D and an E. And right now, I just have something noted like, go something like, the Elections Division of the Secretary of State's office shall notify each town clerk and board of civil authority described in subdivision A that they must perform the audits. And that can be modified to include a date by. New subsection E, the Elections Division of the Secretary of State's office shall provide support and training to each town clerk and board of civil authority described in subsection A. And those can be modified, deleted, however you like, but right now I'll just leave those in as a placeholder or. The next part of the bill has been modified in this draft 1.7 is section 21. This is under prohibiting appointment of interested parties to a recount committee. And this is Representative Emmons' bill that my colleague Attorney Anderson spoke to earlier. So that is the highlighted portion of page 21 going into 22. The next part of the bill that has been amended is under deadline modifications and miscellaneous clarifications, specifically section 30. And this is on page, let's see, 26. And this this will amend 17 VSA 232703 as examining petitions, supplementary petitions. And this will allow election officers to return defective petitions, signatures in a presidential primary to a candidate within 2 business days from receipt instead of the 72 hours currently in statute. And this is mirrors similar language and section 25 above. So we have a replication of that that new deadline across different election types. And again, this was part of the prior bill, but it was integrated with the ranked choice voting sections. And so now it's removed. This came out, so it's going back in.
Rep. Morgan?
I'm sorry, are you done with that section too?
Yes.
Then, can we just step back to 21 for just 1 second? I was looking at one thing. Does
Page or
statute,
section?
21?
Page or section?
Page.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, page 4, 5. One we just did prior to this,
How about sections?
Oh, I'm sorry, 21, I said it.
Section 21, thank you.
So on page 21, what's that one? So.
How are you applying the word 21?
Section
To both page and.
So does the statute take into account who the watchdog on that is? Or is that necessary or not necessary? Am I overthinking it just to go, does that fall upon the Shire town?
It would be, right, county clerk and then the courts, depending on
Okay,
what phase they're
okay, all right, okay, thank you. Easy.
in. And that is all the modifications.
Okay. All right, we are committee, we are sussing out this portion about the district audits. The Secretary of State's office right now, she is actively corresponding on that. And then what is the big outlier left other than Fusion?
I think that's it, other than Fusion. I have,
Yeah, open the table, hands.
I have heard some feedback about, the consent for write-in candidate deadline being so far ahead, and I understand that the Secretary of State's office required that because of the printing of the ballots.
Yes.
But just wanted to voice that I have heard some negative feedback on that.
Okay.
You said it again, the Secretary of State's office is pushing back because of,
No.
They required, the Secretary of
write-in.
State's office requires that there.
if
be
there's gonna be a,
advance notice of a write-in candidate, so the consent of candidate so far in advance because of the printing and mailing of the ballots timeline. Which,
yeah, I got a little feedback on that too. And that,
yeah,
people upset about that one as well. Yeah. That they feel like it sort of takes away the concept of a write-in candidate. Hey, last minute, we didn't have any.
If you don't know, you're running for state rep 5 days.
I got it.
Come on.
I had it. I'm just telling you what people are telling me.
I understand that, but I also am empathetic to what the workload and just.
Yeah. No, I was
We're
just,
never gonna make them all happy.
that was the other half of my words. However, my town clerk said, boy, I sure would like to know the names to be looking for.
Yes.
So there's the other half of my question.
All right,
Or my-
apologies for getting a little.
No, my. I was
Don't
just-
wake up on March
I had the
4th and say,
however.
oh, I'm gonna run for governor today.
Yeah, well, cause like, then you aren't having to look for Daffy Duck.
That's what I'm saying, man. I'm done talking about Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. Hulk Hogan, I heard that one.
Mine is the rapper.
Okay,
No.
so that is that, and then Representative Waters.
Director of Elections is on his way over.
Oh, wonderful. Yes. Whoa, throat. Okay, so we did get feedback on that. I am personally comfortable with how the words are on that. Are we finding that amenable?
Yeah.
As a table, Representative?
Yeah, I'm with the town clerks on this, that, you're going to launch a campaign, you should know more than at least a week from the actual election. Put in the effort and be ready to maybe win and take office.
Representative.
so just one thing on that, I did hear Rep. Pincinel saying she would be willing to take names up until 5 o'clock the day before. So I just wanted to throw that out there
That was for
because
local election.
only for local elections?
Yep.
Okay, I
Make a
did not hear
distinction.
that part of it. Okay, so that clarifies it for me.
Local elections.
Right.
Especially if you get your ballot, see that nobody's running, so you know what, I'll
Yeah.
run for high bail.
Yep. No, that's good. I totally agree, but I thought you meant, like for state rep, for instance, also.
It's for local.
There's a distinction. All right, Representative Morgan.
Yeah, and just devil's advocate one last time, I know it's not gonna change anything, or we're not gonna probably change anything on it. The other last comment I did not throw in there that somebody threw at me is, hey, last minute, looked at it, said nope, and I did make a decision that I will throw my name in, and that's valid. That's got validity. You know, maybe somebody twists his arm to go, well, you know, we don't have anybody, but we think you could do it. We faith in you, Hooper. You could be our guy. And I talked you into it. I did hear that argument too, and that's got validity to a degree.
So
I'm
and
just
this bill has a
saying
lot of stops left on the train.
I'm sorry.
And this bill's got a lot of stops left on the
Yeah.
train.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
literally the first.
Well, there's some other places people could be influencers on this.
That's what I'm saying, man. There's
I got you.
downrange.
So that's something that Rep Ango could pass to the people she's hearing from as well.
Cooper of Randolph. Did you have?
No.
All right, so we seem settled here. Representative Cox.
This is actually for Sandy. For kind of direct, for Sandy might be able to answer it easier for us. So for a local election, letting a town clerk know by about, by 5 o'clock that day that you're voting, hey, I am running for this bailiff position or whatever. Would it affect the clerks if they found out the day of the election, say for a rep or a senator, that if they notified the clerk, look for my name, we're running a write-in campaign that day, at least you would still have that same notion of to look for that name. And if the candidate let every town clerk know the same day, then they would know, look for my name. That if there's a stipulation in there, even up to the day of the election for the town clerk to say they have to notify him, they can't just run a campaign without letting the clerk know. They would still get that notification and it would be the same amount of work as if they told you 10 days prior. Correct? It wouldn't change the workload, but it would let you know.
Let us know, yeah.
So there, if there's a stipulation that they let you know prior to, say 5 o'clock election day, the same as you do for local, it would be the same amount of work, but you would know to look for their name. But they would have to let each town clerk know.
Right.
Is that something that could be worked with?
I can't speak on behalf of everybody, all the clerks.
No,
I mean,
but
in a small town, it could, but
it,
the Secretary of State is the one who proposed the other.
Yeah.
So,
we'll let I'll hold that again for,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
that goes in with what I was hearing also about write-ins and last minute decision makers. So,
No, but I think we're striking a good balance here between like the bigger inflow of races to the smaller ones, right?
Mhm.
And so that's the trick, right? Like there's a bit of an ego right here. I personally think the balance is pretty well balanced, at least to get this thing out the door. And that this has got one committee left here and then the entire Senate process plus 2 floors.
Mhm.
Especially since here we're talking about General Assembly all the way up to federal office.
Yeah.
So I don't think it makes sense to start making certain carve outs for each office on when the
Because then it's
deadline
just
is.
confusing.
And I don't see how it's logistic for if you decide you're gonna start a write-in campaign for governor to then notify every town in the state that you are launching a write-in campaign
I know, I get it.
sooner than this is the second Friday preceding the primary election.
Yes. So we were just quickly joined by our elections director to discuss the component around the Bennington or the district audit. So yes, Mr. Devlin, if we may.
Morning, Sean Chan, Elections Director, Secretary of State. Everyone knows
How you doing today? Yeah, no.
Good, well.
Are you informed as to the discussion that we're having in and around?
Just at a high level, just that it had to do with the audit portion
Yeah.
section that we see.
So essentially, all right, where are we? What page? We're all over. What page was the audit again?
Section 20,
20, oh, is that the 21?
it's coming, yes, it's, no.
No, that was the-
Page 20.
Page 20. Thank you. on or before.
Sections one.
So the question within this was trying to position this succinctly. Did you?
Sure.
All right, fire away.
So as we discussed, we are modifying the language to not require every town or every voting district to audit their voter rolls. We are asking a section that has maybe some boundary issues or whatever. The current language says local boards of civil authority and town clerks whose municipal boundaries are divided for the purpose of representative districts and senatorial districts shall audit their voter checklists. That I think we agreed covers those districts. The concern that some of us were having was that we want to make sure that's not left up to those districts themselves to decide whether or not they are one of those.
Yeah.
So we are hoping that we can include language that would ask the Secretary of State's office or, you, the
Sure.
elections director, to notify those towns. I know you're already planning, you said in testimony, you're already planning on offering support.
Yes.
That we could put in the language in the bill that you are going to notify which towns need to participate. And we're wondering if we do include a date, which some would like to do, what an appropriate date would be, considering the fact that they need to, the town clerks, with the current language requires them to submit their audit by September 15th, 2025. What would be a good date for the Secretary of State's office? What gives you enough time
Oh, to notify?
to notify those towns that they need to do the audit?
I mean, we can do it upon passage or take 2 weeks of passage. I mean, we can do it.
2 weeks of passage.
2 weeks of passage.
Okay.
Checkbox done.
Okay.
Council, make it be so. Yeah, and that was just something we wanted to just have that distinct sort of like notification deadline.
Yeah, no,
So
that
there
makes,
was clarity of the beginning of the action.
that makes perfect sense.
Wonderful.
We just didn't want to give you a due date without consulting.
Oh,
Yeah.
Appreciate it. No, that's.
Crossover week curveballs.
I appreciate it. No, as I mentioned yesterday, I think we've gone through on the legislative website, you have all the districts out there. We've counted the 24 towns that have multiple districts. So I could send it off today, but it makes sense to do it after passage. 2 weeks is perfect. Thank you.
So Tango, then Pistol.
Thank you very much for running over here.
Sure.
Hear it in person, because that was my request and I really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you thinking. That's always good to be.
Represent.
Things seem simple and sometimes they aren't, but.
Well, that's the thing. We're like, whatever, it's in.
Right.
Wah, 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 wah.
I appreciate it. Always happy to run over.
Sorry, Representative Pistol.
So the way that we have the bill reading right now is that on or before September 15th, the town clerks have to notify the Secretary of State's office that they've done it. And then we give the Secretary of State's office 2 months to do a written report to us. Does the Secretary of State's office need 2 months to do that report? Or can we extend the deadline for the clerks a little bit longer to give them more time?
We wanted the report back for that date, so if we had to make a policy choice, we had a bigger berth. The other side of that, I mean, that's just a month turnaround.
No, I understand November 15th for them.
Yeah.
But could they have till October 1st? And then that gives them.
Clerks.
The clerks.
Yeah,
That's what I'm asking.
we'd be fine with
Would you have
that.
enough time?
Yeah, it would be enough.
6 weeks, a month there would be enough
Not knowing
to
when
compile
our
that.
ask is going to be.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering if we could change that to
That's a good point.
October 1st.
Instead of August
Instead of
15th.
I got
September
no problem
15th.
kicking that. Oh,
September 15th.
15 days.
Well, August is when they have to.
Provide their summary.
Lead the
They need to complete by August.
And then they have to notify the secretary.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm saying if we gave them until.
Yep.
September 15th and maybe October 1st, they don't need a month to report. Once it's done, they should be able to submit the report as soon as it's done. You don't need a whole month to say, oh, they'll forget about it, so it'll happen. So if you give them,
Well, there'll be some compilation.
yeah.
Yeah, I think some compilation and often some follow-up. I think if, the information that isn't clear, having that extra time to be able to go back and ask the follow-up question of you said you completed and found X, but didn't answer the part of, was that corrected, or just hypothetical. And there's often some back and forth, but no, I think October 1st would be plenty of it.
Cool. And if we all find that amenable, make that be so as well. All right, clock. Yes, thank you. So, all right, that took care of that piece, at least for the amended language to review later. Elephant in the room time. Let's have the conversation on the elephant.
We gotta take that section out of the bill.
And the section you're referring to is said elephant of
What?
fusion.
I think the technical term is
Cross nomination.
nominations. Fusion candidates,
Yes.
Okay,
just.
do you want to elaborate on why you would like it removed or no?
Because it's politically controversial.
I'm good with
No,
that.
I mean, I respect the bluntness of it.
I concur.
Yeah. Representative Boyden. All right, we're gonna keep it semi-formal here. Representative Boyden.
I
And
just want
Saul.
to mention that the purpose of a fusion candidate or cross nomination that we heard yesterday was to elevate minor parties in a lot of states. And with Vermont having 3 major parties and 2 notable minor parties, I don't know, I see it making sense staying in if we were to provide more guardrails on what is a fusion or cross nomination to Vermont. And how does it align with the true purpose of it overall?
No, I think that's a good historical distinction as to why this exists in Vermont's practices and law. Representative Nugent.
Thank you. I really think it's a good provision and I'd like to see it in there if possible, even though it's, you know, of course, like a lot of stuff we talk about, it brings up a lot of, different opinions, but I think like reflecting on it from my perspective, and I've been politically active since I was like a child, even when I go into the, you know, ballot box, I look at the ballot, I look at the, well, that Democrat / progressive or Democrat / Republican, and my immediate reaction is, what is that? I don't know what that is. And I think like, as I mentioned yesterday, part of the issue is that it says party. Even, this may seem picky, but I feel like even if we changed it to parties, at least that would signal to the voter that there is no Democrat Progressive Party. It would be a little bit clearer, I think, as to the state's role versus the party's role. Because I don't think it's the state's role to decide that there's a Democrat Progressive Party.
Okay,
I think-
I'm making a list.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm
We
like,
literally, we're all defer to Boyden.
okay, we'll go. That was kind of you because I was gonna defer to rank.
My point kind of goes off of that it is a little unclear of the cross nomination because we have different processes for how you can obtain that cross nomination, whether it's through write-in of your constituents or through the actual party. So it's unclear to the observer of if it is political or just your voters saying, hey, all of us on both sides, whether it's any of the 3, we support you. And that's how you receive that nomination, or that it's truly political of the party saying, hey, you align with our party values. So
Yes.
here you go.
And that's, you know, I spoke to that at certain points where it was discussing, you know, it's like you have the Rs to the Ds and then the Ps to the Ds, and there's no like RPs, everybody's just kind of nibbling around the edge of the D. And over the course of time, we call it cross-party nomination, but this cross-party pollination kind of obscures the fray as to how the public understands what a candidate's sort of political identity. Right? But again, my opinion is my opinion. Representative, you go. And then
Thank you. I just want to reply to your, what is this? Who is this? And I was never a fusion candidate. I'm going to bring personal experience in, which I rarely do in committee. I was never a fusion candidate, but I grew disillusioned with national politics, and to identify as a Republican, straight out Republican, was not something that defined me. And what defines me is working with everybody. I have worked with the progressives. I've worked with the Dems, I've worked with the Republicans, I've worked with the independents, and I think I've got a really good track record. So what defined me was the ability to be able to say to my constituents, yes, I know that you pull a Democratic ballot to vote on, and I would like to be on your ballot and receive your nomination as well. So the last two elections I've run as an RD, and it's been really gratifying to me to see people who disagree with me totally on some issues still vote for me because they know that I represent some of the things that they believe in. So that's who these fusion candidates really are in most cases, or at least in my case.
Nugent, then Waters Evans, and I need a new piece of paper.
Or a larger one.
Yeah, I think
What about Mary Catherine?
just, I totally understand that, like, and I think parties, I think parties represent like a collection of opinions, right? It's not like an identity, it's like a policy decision, but yes, people do. Psychologically, people tend to identify with their party affiliation, I think, but it's not what the purpose of it is. It's an organizing structure to get stuff done that like you, in theory, like, or understand or like align with most of those positions. So I guess where like my thing is, I think like the role of the state is unclear versus the role of the party and what means what. And I think that like, going back to like, we tend to form our coalitions within two major parties in this country. Other places with parliamentary systems form their coalitions after the election. So it's like, that's why it functions that way. And it's why it's supposed to be like more representative of the majority of people. Because we do it like before we do the election. So I feel like there's nothing that keeps people from aligning like policy wise with one party or the other before the election and making sure their voters do that because, both parties of course have like quite a big umbrella of people, beliefs, backgrounds that make up one party. And I don't think voters expect you to be, 100%. In fact, I think they'd be quite annoyed if you were just 100% always aligned with one group or the other. But I think we could be clearer with voters about what the role is of the state versus the party here.
Thank you.
Did you have somebody next?
It looks like I got a representative from Burlington. And then
Another one from the.
I raised, okay, never mind. It doesn't matter.
I got it for a second. Coconut water, sorry, I missed.
I'm looking. I believe Representative Stone is the next person to talk, and then I believe myself. If I missed someone, please let me know.
Sorry, short trips in the fridge.
It's okay.
It's fine. I was just saying, clearly this conversation demonstrates that this is an issue that I think for us to take more testimony on, perhaps not at this time, perhaps not in relation to this bill. I do think when that time comes that I appreciate what Rep. Boyden said about guardrails and more clearly defining what a fusion candidate is. I was a fusion candidate last session. I'm not now, but yeah, I just think we need to more clearly define it. I can see it being used as a political identity, but I don't think its intention is to be used as like a tool to.
Restriction.
Right, to be used, making sure that it is used appropriately. I can see it being used as like, this is who I am, this is my identity, but maybe sometimes that's not what it's used for. And maybe sometimes it's used for other things but who knows? We need to have more testimony, more time to talk about it. And not now. I don't think we have time to do it in 2 days or one day.
Waters Evans, Cooper of Burlington. Right?
Sounds good to
Back in
me.
it.
It's interesting to hear everybody talking about this right now. Because we're here in the context as a group of people to make election laws and to talk about elections. We really try our hardest. I believe we do a great job as a committee and as a body to keep like the really specific political references out of it. And, you know, it's the undercurrent, right? Like we all know that it's there all of the time and that, but also we're trying to work together to create these laws. So I see two things right here. There is a law that we are trying to pass that is going to create clearer boundaries, guidelines for what it means to be a candidate of a political party. But that's deciding something that's philosophical or ideological in the context of making a law about the elections process, which is why it's so complicated. I generally feel like it is totally okay as an elections law concept to say, pick one, that's where you stand, that's your party. We're not managing the parties. We're managing the elections process. We're managing the primary process. We're managing what goes on the ballot, right? I think that it's gotten, I don't mind, Representative Randolph said it's politically controversial. I think we probably should lean into those conversations and not avoid making laws because of the controversy. I think in this case, however, that there is a lot to consider that goes just beyond, you know what, don't do it, or yes, do it. And I think that it has come up in a way that I don't think we're prepared today to take more testimony on this issue. I don't think we're prepared to even leave it in the bill right now and say, you know what, let's let the Senate do it. I think that we have a whole other, you know, a session and a half if we need to revisit the bill in another context, if it gets reintroduced as its own thing next year. I just wonder if maybe the miscellaneous elections bill isn't exactly the place for it because it's a bigger conversation. My feeling, despite, I mean, to be completely politically controversial, let's say, we're talking, right? So I'll just say this. I'll say, what if we do this? What if we say, as the testimony we heard that Rep. Boynton just referenced, listen, if this is to assist minor parties, then let's reconsider what it means to be a major political party in Vermont. And perhaps there's a party that shouldn't be a major political party in Vermont. And then we revisit that conversation. And then we say, okay, be a fusion candidate because now there are only two major political parties. But that's not a discussion that I think we should be having today. And I don't think we have time for it. I think we need to hear from a lot more people. And I'm not saying that I want to do that thing where say progressive isn't a major party. I'm just saying that is part of the conversation. What you know what I mean? Or should be part of the conversation. So to that end, I don't think that we should leave it in this bill right now. I think if we take the fusion section out, then we can discuss it in we can give it all of the time and space that it deserves because I think it's huge and it touches not just on election law, but so many other things and affects many people, not only in this building, but like in the whole state. That's what I have to say about it.
Thank you. I got a Hooper, Burlington, a Coffin, and a Morgan. And then we got a 10:30 with cannabis. I'd like to take 5 minutes.
So I think I essentially agree with what you said. If we went over into the Wellwood House and took a section and said, what do you think this means among the people that have actually participated in elections, we'd get a variety of wrong answers considering what we're looking at as opposed to what everybody else believes figured. The question was sort of raised like, how do I identify what I am? This is on the ballot and it's mixing up what you should have done in your campaign as opposed to what we allowed to be put on the ballot. And I don't think that a lot of even candidates know when they say I'm a this, that they're cross-pollinating actual parties as opposed to ideals. I think it needs to be tightened up. It's not right at this point.
Again, speaking to this section, because there are other parts of this section and things that would affect it that I found yesterday and that I still see today. Removing this, and it's not about being politically charged, it's not about anything, it's about fairness because people do have a choice. make their decisions the way for how they're gonna run, how they represent themselves. That removing this at this time, trying to force it through just to get this out of the room is a bad idea. We need to give consideration to this as a separate topic and remove it from this. If we remove it from this bill, it makes it a better bill because we're not putting a limit on people just for the sake of getting something out of the room. And we have to look at everybody's freedoms in this as well. It's, to me, I would find it bad to force somebody to identify as whatever. We don't do that anywhere else in our life. You choose and you be flexible. So I think we should get this out of here for those reasons, not because it's politically charged or too difficult. I think it needs more of its own information.
Okay. For the sake of clock.
I'll be very quick.
Yep.
I appreciate Representative V.L. Coffin's deep thought on a number of topics this evening. It's very thoughtful insights. I'd like to recognize that first and foremost. But second, yes, and we have time in the second half of the buy-in to address this if we want to have an impact on the 2026 elections. Enough said.
All right.
We're talking only about the fusion section of this section, not so.
Only fusion. So getting a sense that we're gonna remove that section from the bill.
So that's what my question is, so all section 7 come down?
Section 6 and 7 on the.
Mr. Devlin, you're on.
Okay. So, yes, cross nominations are for the bill. This is section 6 and 7. That is,
Contents and arches.
so that is page 5 of the bill, where we find the section. And again, 17, section 4, that is, well, amend section, statutory section 17 VSA 2381, the applicability of this chapter under nominations by party committee. Creates the new subsection C, reading, in no event shall a candidate who loses a majority party be nominated to appear. Oh, sorry, I apologize. I'm bringing off the wrong one. That's the one by candidacy. Cross nominations is there. This is section 6, adds a new subdivision 5 to 17 VSA section 2472 as contents of ballots, stating a candidate shall list up to one party next to the candidate's name on the general election ballot. In section 7, to amend 17 VSA 2474, that's choice of party on ballots, so that the candidate must choose a single nomination among any parties nominating the candidate and inform the Secretary of State of that choice before the printing of the ballots, general election. Those can be easily removed from the bill if the committee so wishes, modified, et cetera.
Okay. Yeah, so what I would like to do is try and get a clean copy from Mr. Devlin for us to consider for vote, since we have this slotted to vote out today with all of the adjustments and amendment that we have agreed upon throughout the course of this conversation. Bob, I see your hand. Mr. Devlin, how much time do you need to turn that around?
Approximately 15 minutes.
Wonderful. So, Representative Hoover.
For future consideration, one of the things that we're doing it with this sort of language is also telling the voter whether they're voting for this majority or that majority, which is majority or majority. So it's a point of information that might be relevant when we talk about it later.
Just because the words are coming off the page does not mean the conversation is ending.
Should we?
So,
Should we do it?
all right. Yeah, let's do a thumbs up on to remove the sections around cross-party nomination. You only get one thumb, Hoop.
I see it.
We get 2 hoops, 2 thumbs. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Devlin. I look forward to those edits. All right, committee, we are 5 minutes ahead of schedule getting to cannabis. I would love to take us off for 5 minutes, Autumn. And let's stretch our